In 2025, a video game was announced in Japan. The premise: you feed garbage to a doll, and the more garbage she eats, the smarter she becomes. And the creator said it was inspired by a celebrated literary masterpiece, a novel about human dignity. The Japanese internet erupted, but the real story here isn't the game. It's what the outrage accidentally revealed: a quiet gap in Japanese law, one that rarely gets talked about. Japan is often called one of the safest countries in the world, and by international data, sexual crime in particular is reported at strikingly low levels. Remember that. We'll come back to it, and it won't look the same. So let's start with the game. In July 2025, a small indie studio published a store page for a new title. You raise a life-size doll, sold as an adult product. But this doll is different. She holds a kind of life. She speaks, she feels, and the more garbage you feed her, the more intelligent she becomes. As she grows smarter, her relationship with the player changes. Like an apprentice, like a lover, sometimes like your worst nightmare. The premise alone was enough to get people talking, but there was also this detail. The garbage wasn't shown as rotting waste, shoe soles, cleaning rags, dead flowers, plated beautifully like fine restaurant dishes. The creator said they wanted it to look genuinely delicious. And the game was first announced as suitable for all ages. But the part that lit the fire was the inspiration. The creator claimed it came from Flowers for Algernon. If you've read it, you know. Daniel Keyes' novel about a man with an intellectual disability who becomes a genius through surgery, and in gaining intelligence discovers the full weight of human loneliness, and then slowly loses it all again. It's one of the most beloved stories about human dignity ever written. So when a game about feeding garbage to a loved doll claimed that book as its inspiration, a lot of people did not hear respect. They heard something closer to desecration. The studio issued an apology, but they also said the core theme would not change. The creator insisted the real intent was different, to depict how a being born with something unwanted finds a way to live. Maybe that's true, but for many the gap between that intention and what was actually on the screen was simply too wide, and the argument split the people who were paying attention. On one side, it's fiction. A doll doesn't have rights. If you hate it, don't buy it. On the other side, mostly women, something harder to put into words. One post stayed with me. I thought maybe I was overreacting, but when I replaced the heroine with a dog or a child, I felt sick. I realized I'd been trained to believe that in fiction, it doesn't matter how a woman is treated. That word, trained, is where this stops being about a game. Because the question underneath was simple. Why couldn't these women just dismiss it as only fiction? The answer is that in Japan, whether fiction influences real behavior is a question people argue about constantly, especially around sexual content, and often along gender lines. In the 1990s, a basketball manga called Slam Dunk exploded the sport's popularity nationwide. A manga featuring a Siberian husky triggered a nationwide husky boom. Even though the manga itself didn't romanticize the breed, readers took only the cuteness. And when reality set in, abandoned dogs became a social problem. Fiction moves people, in good directions and in bad. And in Japan, there have been criminal cases where investigators or media pointed to manga or anime as part of the offender's influences. The victims are most often women, sometimes children. I'll spare you the specifics. The point is this: in Japan, there have been people who acted on what they saw in fiction, and the line between the two has been crossed. That's why those women couldn't laugh it off. To them, the game didn't feel like fantasy. It felt like something sitting on the edge of the real. But here is the part that genuinely shocked me when I looked into it. Even when these things do happen in real life, the law often doesn't see them as sexual crimes at all. In 2024, at a company in Okayama, a regular city in western Japan, a man did something to his female co-workers. He contaminated things they would eat and drink, a mug, a jar of honey, with his bodily fluids. Then he posted about it online, bragging. The women consumed it without knowing. You'd assume this was prosecuted as a sexual crime. It wasn't. The charges were property damage and trespassing for sneaking into the women's restroom to commit the act. The sentence, 1.5 years, suspended, meaning as long as he stayed out of trouble, he would never see the inside of a cell. So, let me explain how that's even possible. In Japan, when this kind of act targets a woman's belongings, a cup, a bag, an item of clothing, the law often treats it as damage to an object, the crime of soiling someone's property so they can no longer use it. The focus lands on the object, not on the woman, not on her dignity. Think about what that means for the victim. On paper, what happened to her body was filed in the same drawer as a scratched car or a broken window. Her experience, the violation, the fear, has no place in that drawer. The law simply has nowhere to put it. To be clear, this isn't an absolute rule. When the act targets a woman's body directly, other charges can apply. Assault, even sexual assault. But when the target is an object, it often falls into that lighter category. Now go back to the beginning. Remember how Japan is one of the safest countries in the world? Remember those strikingly low rates of sexual crime? Here's the uncomfortable question. If an act like this is recorded as property damage instead of a sexual crime, then it never shows up in the sexual crime statistics at all. I'm not saying Japan's safety is a lie. The numbers are real, and in many ways Japan genuinely is safe, but it does make you wonder how much of that number is built on harm that was simply filed under a different name. I want to be careful here. Freedom of expression matters. I don't want creative work to wither. Almost no one in Japan does. A doll in a game is not a person. But the fear those women felt was never really about a doll. It was about a reality their own country's law still struggles to fully name. That's why a game about feeding garbage felt like more than a game. Not because they couldn't tell fiction from reality, but because in Japan that line has been crossed before. What do you think? That's everything for today. I make these videos as someone who genuinely loves Japan, not just the beautiful parts that make it into travel guides, but the complicated, painful, real parts too. What makes Japanese people angry? What breaks their hearts? What makes them happy? What they actually value? If that's the Japan you want to understand, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.